Al Walgenbach.
Wait. That son of a bitch owes me 20 bucks. Yeah, that's right. So I'm Al, or Alfred, depending when we knew each other. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. I started at Northern in the fall of 1988 as an acting student. And when I got out of high school, I was a gifted actor. I had natural comic timing. And I had a stick shoved so far up my ass that I had Muppet nightmares on a regular basis. Now, when I started at Northern, when I got here, this was the first step to me becoming the Black Steve Martin. I had plans, all right? I was gonna be George Carlin on ecstasy. And ecstasy wasn't even a thing yet. Like, I was way ahead of the game, right? So I had everything, everything going my direction. With the exception that I hated rehearsing. Hated it. Wasn't real comfortable with rejection. And I was lazy. And I mean, like, while my classmates are, following their calling and honing their craft, I'm still making sure that I don't have to take a math class to get a theater degree. So just to recap, right? I'm a lazy acting student who doesn't like rejection and hates rehearsing. Yeah. But I loved smoking pot. Anybody else in the house smoke pot tonight? Who's from Philly? So I like smoking a lot of pot, right? And the problem is that smoking pot ends up affecting my memory. Like, every time, right? So I became the prop guy, right? So then, all I had to remember is what a chair was. Boom, I'm in, right? So, in the late 80s, right, Nirvana didn't have a big album yet. OJ was still just an actor. And my pot didn't have its own name, okay? So today, it's called Northern Lights, it's called Pineapple Express, it's called Bill Murray's dog Charlie. It's whatever crazy shit we can think of, right? But in 1990, we called it pot. Sometimes we would get it and it would be really good, right? And then we would call it good pot. That was how it went. See, Pat and I always had a special kind of relationship, Like, girls came and went, jobs came and went. Pat always stuck around. It never held a grudge. It stuck with me when I moved from town to town, when I was traveling between theaters. And it might take a few days for us to find each other, but we was connected in the meantime. We always work it out. I remember when I first started college and Pot and I first kind of met each other, I was, I was shy, fear of the unknown maybe, So when Pot would show up at a party, I'd sort of, fake turn it away, and pretend I didn't know it, right? but we'd always hook up in the end, you know. And then one day I'm at a party and I'm going through the normal, pot ritual, if you will, and a friend of mine says, "God damn it, Alfred, every time pot comes around at the party, you always say, never do this, this never happens," and you giggle like a child, and then you do it, okay? So I need you to accept that you're a pot smoker, okay? I need you to own it, hit it, and pass it. So, I think the old adage goes, sometimes you never see the one that's right for you. It's right in front of your face all the time. Until a good friend plays matchmaker, right? Puts the two of you together. So, thanks, buddy. There you go. There you go. So, then there's my asshole friend, the alcohol, right? So sure, we were a lot of fun together, right, in college, and when we're traveling around the country and everything, right? But more and more, Pot and I keep asking ourselves, who is inviting this guy, right? Again with this, like every time we all get together, it seems to end in some sort of embarrassing situation, right? Like, no, you can't take cuts in the bathroom line. No, you can't pee in my front yard. Yes, you're being cited for indecent exposure. So we don't hang out much anymore, which has actually caused some uncomfortable conversations at parties with mutual friends, because they know I'm still hanging with pot, right? But they liked hanging out with alcohol. It was kind of weird, and not everybody's cool with pot. So if I'm gonna hang out with pot, sometimes I gotta go to the garage, right? Sometimes we gotta go for a walk, get a little bit of alone time. You can't just be hanging out with pot in the house. People aren't cool with that all the time, right? But with the alcohol, shit, I gotta hang out with the alcohol right there in the kitchen and get all crazy. Everybody loves the alcohol, which is amazing considering the, repeated indecent exposure. What are you gonna do, right? So one of my oldest friends at Northern is Mr. Mike Salmi. Wave to the nice people. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So Mike and I actually met my freshman year, right? We had a mutual friend. Let's call him Jim. Okay? So Jim and I are walking through Van Antwerp one day, and we bump into Mike. So Jim introduces us, right? And then they sit and have like this 5 or 10 minute discussion, of which I do not understand a single word that Mike says, none of it. He talks for like 10 minutes, and okay, great. So we're leaving, and I say to Jim, I'm like, he seems like a nice guy, but what's with the talking thing, right? What's that about? And he said, oh, Mike's a Youper. And I said, a what now? He's like, UP, he's from the UP, he's a Youper. I was like, oh, so that makes Mike my first official Youper, right? So, still together to this day. So, right, plaque is in the mail. So, like 2 years later, Mike and I are in voice and diction class together. I think with a couple of other y'all in here, right? And so, as you know, part of voice and diction, you have to end up learning all these various dialects. Right? And it seemed like no matter how hard Mike worked, right, his dialect always sounded like Samuel L. Jackson was doing an impersonation of Paula Deen. And Hank and I would sit in the back of the room and be like, it's Mike's day. It's Mike's day. This is going to be good. And it's seriously, British, Russian, French, it didn't matter, right? Every time Mike got up to do the monologue, it sounded like he was auditioning for Porgy and Bess. It was insane. We're like, how do you do that every time? It was almost like Abbott and Costello, who's on first, right? But Porgy was always on third base. So it was just Porgy, every time Mike got up on stage. So Mike and I were actually acting students originally together. So whereas I became the great chair identifier. Mike is actually one of the premier scenic carpenters in DC today. So, true story. So we're at college for like a couple of years, right? Hanging out and doing stuff, and we are listening to all of these stories from the more senior students, how crazy they are off campus, and how crazy things get, these great parties and everything. And so after listening to those stories and then seeing Fritz the Cat at Jammerich Hall one Friday night, I had this wild itch that I knew only poor decision making was going to scratch, right? And so it just so happens that Mike and I started talking, and we're like, man, you know what, I'm tired of these guys giving us all these great stories. We're gonna go make our own stories, right? We're gonna do it our way. So Mike ends up renting a house up on the corner of Ridge and 3rd, and getting like 6, 7 of us. Rent was $85 each. And I still don't know if I've ever been able to forgive him for setting up that house, or thank him enough, because as we discussed, the whole memory thing, you know. So we unpack like mid-August, right? We get everything unpacked, and I come to like November on the end of this righteous bender, right? And I'm in the lobby, and this freshman is looking me in the face, and they're asking me if what everyone says happens in the house is true. I'm like, yeah, I guess, I don't know, right? I mean, I don't know what anybody is saying, right? And Pot and I are getting along famously, so I don't exactly remember anything that's happening. But I know how I feel when everybody shows up at the house, and if they're talking about it after, then odds are, right? So yeah, it's probably true. So once we get off of campus, I end up with freedom, adventure, and 3 years of diarrhea. So I eventually go to the doctor, and he diagnoses me with Wildcat Den grilled cheese and onion rings. Sure enough. I was like, is that curable? Is there a pill for that or something? And we hung out a lot in the Wildcat Den, but the old Wildcat Den, right? Yeah, right. Like, half the lights were out, right? It had paneling. It seemed to go on forever into these dark recesses. It was like that house that you would hang out in where the kid's parents let him drink, right? So you'd all go to his house and hang out. Yes, with the carved up tables, exactly. But with nothing but pornography. Or was that just my table? Was that? So I'm hanging out at the Wildcat Den one day with some of my darker, more cynical friends. And I get, well, yeah, like I had any other kind, right? As opposed to my friendly charitable ones. Wait a minute, they all went to Central. So we're all hanging out having lunch one day, and I suddenly have an attack in the gastrointestinal area, okay? So if anybody isn't, familiar, an attack is like it's like a minor explosion of nausea and hate that originates in my colon and then results in either A, long distinguished walk, or B, a sudden violent pant shitting, right? So I excuse myself from the table, and I walk distinguishedly to the Wildcat Den men's room, right? And so I get to the men's room, right? And I open up the door, and then as soon as I get in, I am reminded that the men's room is just one big room, right? There's no stalls, there's nothing. So you walk in and it's door, right? Sink, paper towel holder, urinal, toilet, door, right? And so, right, and how's my mind right now? Because I know like a 30-year would notice it, right? Did I put the glass down on nothing? So as I finish bathroom roll call, right, I get back around to the door and I'm reminded, door has no lock, right? So it's kind of like pooping in a closet. It's a very well lit closet, as it turns out. The one part of the Wildcat Den that is well lit. And so at this point, I start like, maybe this isn't such a good idea, right? I start to, maybe re-examine my situation, and then my lower GI reminds me of what the real priority is, and it is not vanity. So I commit myself, I go over, I take my seat, and I'm just going to get this done as quickly as I can. So I'm sitting down, and I without getting too graphic, take care of business. And then I reach over to an empty toilet paper roll, right? Not even the little threads of hope, like nothing. There's nothing there. And so yeah, I panic, right? I'm panicking. I'm in a well-lit closet with no lock on the door, right? So I start looking around the room and I look, hey, paper towel holder, great, and it's full, right? I'm good to go. And so, but then all of a sudden, right, like, it's like 12 feet away. It's way over there. And so, paper towel holder, lockless door. Paper towel holder, lockless door. And I'm measuring, and then I start to feel like Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo, right? And it starts to get closer and farther and closer and farther. Like, you know what, you just need to commit and make this happen. So I own it, we're going, right? So I get up and, right? And I get back, and I'm 2/3 of the way back, and I hear the door creak open. So, full-blown panic, right? Goes without saying. So I get over to the toilet, I sit down fast as I can, right? And I'm just focused solely on the paper towel. I'm just gripping the life out of that. This is all going to pass, right? And then I hear, Alfred? And I look up, and it's Dr. Panowski. And he's all comfy, right? So he's just like, hey man, we're just doing our business, right? So he starts using the urinal. And I'm just in my head the whole time, I'm like, don't scream. You can't scream right now, right? That's so inappropriate, So I just sit there just gripping the paper towel until this whole thing ends. And so he finishes, right? And then he washes his hands. Nice touch. And then he leaves, right? Like the whole thing never happened. And so I regain my composure, and I get up and I finish, if you will, and then I wash my hands. I go back out to the table, and I'm like, I'm fairly certain that I'm going to regret telling you all of this, but you are never going to guess what just happened to me. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.